decías la vida es un juego, nada es para siempre, disfruta al jugar. Yo tenía prisa, buscaba
Everyone give it up for an
respuestas.
autograph, Ben.
Podía tropezar.
I made notes because I knew I was going to be too excited. I was going to forget all the things that I wanted to say. So there they are. I already introduced myself. Hold on. Okay. I have the incredible pleasure of making two wonderful introductions tonight. One of them is to the awesome business competition, and the other one is to Emilio Velis. Emilio! Not yet. How many of you have ideas that you kind of wish you could take to the market or make a reality, or maybe ideas? Have you ever had an idea, you had it for a long time, and then finally somebody else does it? Yeah. I used to have a lot of those. When I came to Humboldt, I had so many ideas, but I didn't have money, and I didn't really know how a lot of things worked. I didn't even know how you'd really go to university, and that took me a while to figure out, but I was really glad I did. I knew there was resources out there, but I just didn't know how to get to them until I went to Silicon Valley and studied it. So I spent a year in Silicon Valley learning how they do it, because Silicon Valley knows how it's done. They know that you can apply for competitions and workshops and events and incubators and accelerators. I might have already said that one, but just there's tons of resources out there. And Silicon Valley is really good at making it, but they're really bad at making it good. In fact, what I found is that Silicon Valley never even asked the question, will this make the world a better place? And that's why I'm so excited to be part of a group bringing the awesome business competition here, because Humboldt already asked that question. We know really well how to ask that question. And sometimes the only thing we're missing is resources. And so our hope, and when I say our, we have a team of people working on this. If you're on the team, can you just stand up for a second? They might be all in different areas. There's a hand coming out of the bathroom. There's people over here. Thank you. Thank you, team. This competition is open to all local people that are interested in working on projects and ventures, inventions, and ideas that are agriculture, water, or energy related. It starts right now, and it ends in November. And along the way, we'll have workshops to help with all the different steps so that you can win that competition and win real prize money. We'll have at least $3,000 for the top prize, maybe $5,000. I don't have any of that money yet, but I promise we will. I promise we will when we get there. I first met Emilio because an organization I'm the president of, Apropedia, was doing a worldwide, global, open search for a new executive director to bring us to the next level. And we were deep into the process and interviewing lots of people. And Andrew Lamb, one of the board members, is like, I think I found the person. You need to meet him. So we all interviewed him, and of course his resume is fantastic. He has the MIT innovators, top 8 innovators under the age of 35 in Central America for work that he did with communities that were building open source technology for resilience. He was part of Habitat for Humanity. He had all of these amazing projects, but I knew that all about him before I met him. And what I didn't know, and you'll soon find out, is that he's just humble and awesome. And he's got this way about him, and I might be giving out too much information, but when you're working on a project with him, he's got this thing he does now. He doesn't know I know this. He's got this thing he does. I'm going to try to impersonate him. He's like, well, I don't know, do you think? You do it. And when he says that, what he means is, oh, I'm about to drop some knowledge bombs, right? And that's what he's about to do now. And he's going to do it. I've been peeking on his presentation as he works on it. He's about to tell you stories with candor and honesty that you'll rarely see. Right? These aren't the stories that get you accolades and money and awards. These are the stories that you can actually use to bring into your projects and bring things to the next level. Emilio, por favor.
take this off and walk around. All right. Don't scare me. It will work. Hi. It's a pleasure to be here. Hold on, let me put this somewhere. All right, maybe here? No, too close to the guitar. Freaks me out. All right, let me get this ready. I'm good to go. Let's see, yes. So have you ever, Lonnie stole my line, my opening line. But have you ever thought of any idea that you wanted to bring out and you said, well, it's just not going to come out as I want it to come out. It's not going to be that awesome. So you just leave it aside and you're like, well, I'll just drop it. And I want to talk about those ideas because I've learned over the past few years that those usually bring you to new places that you were not expecting. Because innovating is like a journey. And you start going places, and once you're backpacking in one direction, you end up in a different one. And that is the kind of thing that I'm into. And just to explain it a little bit, there are three main realms in the world that you can innovate upon. One is nature. And one thing that you can do with nature is to harness all of the power of nature and then bring it to you and get everything from it so you can gain more. Or you can bring everything from yourself and then give to nature or the environment. The second one is technology. You can make of technology something that can become an extension of yourself and give you more power. It's a great tool. Or you can let technology change you. And then in the other side, there's this area of personal relationships. And sometimes we want to innovate because we want to get out of a group of people, get knowledge from them so we can gain money, power, influence, or we can strip ourselves of everything and give to everyone else what we desire for them. So, in a way, innovating is either the most selfish thing that you can do or the most selfless. And it depends on how you decide to do it. So there are certain values ingrained on yourself, right? It's some people call it a worldview. It's a set of spectacles with which you look at the world and then you evaluate it. And when you innovate, you come up, or when you start doing things, you start a business, you start working with technology, you start thinking with a set of presuppositions about the world, about how you see it and how it will play out in your journey. And then sometimes there are cases in which things start changing. So let's talk about how we can change the way that the world works and what do we need to do that. And this is a very textbook definition of innovation, about changing the way the world works, because as I mentioned before, there are other things that come into play. So we have to ask, why are we changing it? And what is it for? And what do we want from it? What is it in our personal desire that makes us want to make a big business that will thrive, or a big innovation in technology that will change the way the world works? Is it for you? Is it for somebody else? So I've come to this point where I can look back a little bit and think about how there have been many cases or spaces in my life on which there have been presuppositions about the world, and then I come to this place and there's a clash, and then I go, oh, it doesn't work that way. And that is what I was mentioning at the beginning, that sometimes brings some people down to say, well, it just won't work. But sometimes that is the whole thing. That is what you should be looking for, to find this space on which everything that you thought does not work. And then you change into something different, right? And then that's the resolution of a story, and it can bring to a new story. So to begin, I want to speak about what really matters to you. And I want to tell you a little about some stories of me and some friends and things that we've done, and how we've come to these spaces on which we've ran out of money to continue a project, or we come to the conclusion that it wasn't such a good invention as we thought it was, but it made us change the way that we thought and made it all worth it. And the fact that we have continued doing it, and that I have continued doing it, is the reason why I'm here. So I want to tell you about what matters to me. And I want to start by my personal story with Reacción, which is it's the system that Lonnie was mentioning. So it's the story of three colleagues, Mario, Kako, and I. Mario is all into electronics and design. He works for I cannot say, but one multilateral agency worldwide, and he develops lots of technology. And then Kako is a social architect. And then me, I'm into innovation, and I don't know what else. It's hard to explain. But we all came together because we were interested in technology and open hardware. But there was this story that we all went through while living in El Salvador, and it was a great storm called the Ida storm that for us was really impacting. In my personal experience, it was scary because I was out with some friends that night in 2009. It was 11 years ago, and it started pouring. According to some, to the numbers, it rained in 4 hours what usually rains in 2 months of heavy rains. So it was a lot of water. Rivers were falling in different directions, destroying houses. About 200 people died, and thousands, I think over 5,000 people lost their homes. And I took the decision when I was super young, I was 21, to go out. And my mom was super angry at me. I didn't care. I was like, I'm gonna go change the world. And it was a great decision because I saw, let's see if I can make it, yes. So I saw an image like this. This was close to a beach. I went with some friends. I was not able to do anything to solve the situation, but it really marked me. And many years later, I did lots of work related to natural disasters because of this experience. When I started working with Mario and Kako, we all came together and we started talking about, we should do stuff for natural disasters. And the conversation came up. Why do we want to do it? And we started talking about the storm. And we were all saying, hey, yeah, that was really terrible. And that really marked me. Yes, I was doing relief in this place, etc., etc. So all of these experiences meant something to us and made us want to create any solution for that. So this is basically a set of devices that we would bring to communities. Oh man, that was powerful. Can you? All right. And we said about it's gonna make a sound. All right. So, let me know. Good? Let's see. So this is a set of devices that would communicate sending radio signals. The cool thing about it is that it only uses 3-4 buttons, right? So it's only color code, and it was meant for people who didn't know how to communicate clearly. And especially in an age of like social media, and internet, all the solutions are like satellite communication, so you can send photos and videos. And we said, no, we're gonna make it simple. We're just going to send a color code so that people know what's the problem happening and what's the location. And then communities can organize on their own. to do it on, to self-organize and to go to places where it was needed. We received some funding to do a pilot project for this. We started working with a community close to the border with Guatemala, and we started co-creating with them. And it's a really cool story because we started realizing that the people that were coming to work with us were not younger people who are usually interested in technology, but rather older people who were above 50, 60 years old. Many of them didn't know how to read and write, so we had all these, and also women. So it was all these ladies who wanted to learn about technology, and we started realizing that they were not in for the technology, but rather because it was a problem for them and they wanted something for their community. And we were like super excited about doing this. We started like doing some testing with some prototypes. The idea was to start iterating, and we came to a really nice device. In the end, we brought it, tested it out, the project ended, and as sometimes happens with projects, you just don't have the money to go back anymore, so you go. And then after a few months we came back, and the people were not really using it that much. They were using it, but for different reasons. So they started having their own communications for example, the garbage truck is coming by, so I'm letting you know that. And someone's selling bread, and sending a message with colors. So we started talking about this with them, and we were saying, well, we should use it for natural disasters. And they were like, well, we just want to use it for something different. And we also, in the process, realized that we had to be a little humble and learn from them, and also realize that we still weren't done, right? And we had spent all of this money to develop a project, and we weren't sure about finding more. So we said, well, do we stop? We were like, for a couple months, we went back and forth about, so what's the future of this? And we decided that technology would just be means to an end. So we went back again with the same devices, nothing new added to them, and we started talking to them about what was the problem. One of the things that we realized is that it was very complicated to have GPS and teach people about how to triangulate their position with the GPS. So we said, okay, let's just leave that aside, and we're going to do workshops on teaching people how to do like mapping, to find themselves in the map, to realize what is the landscape, because some of them had never seen a map of their community. And that was, in a way, more useful than having a device that would solve their problems. So we started doing this testing with a different mindset, on which we were teaching by using technology, but not for the sake of technology. We started doing some testing using our kits, and we started using maps. And I love this map that you see up there, because it's still like, we were using MDF, laser cut, etc., to make it look super pretty. And in the end, we couldn't use it. Like, we couldn't use it because it was so hard that you couldn't put like anything through it. But it was a good experience, and we kept working with this community. But then we started iterating this idea of using technology side by side with other things that were not really technology. This is, for example, a workshop that we did in Colombia, in Pasto, and the whole idea was to test 2 workshops in one. So from one side, you have people doing everything with pen and paper. So we were doing community maps, testing vulnerabilities, and then we had another group that were developing technology. So they were learning how to do their own devices, and the whole premise of the workshop was, We're going to find a way to develop technology where there's no capabilities for technology, right? So we tested it out, and then we learned that it was really interesting, for example, to have people who had soft skills, what people call that they're not really technical, and then come with people who had more technical skills, and then go back and forth and say, hey, we don't like this that you're designing, so you should do it this way. And then the others going like, that's not going to work. And then, having this conversation. This workshop was really cool because we ended up with, first of all, a map that could get some of these things in. And then the other one was an iteration that was only meant to teach people how to build technology on their own, and not thinking about creating this big solution that will cost thousands of dollars. So a third one was an iteration that we did in Santiago in collaboration with people from Habitat for Humanity. They brought all of these sweet ladies to do this workshop, and we tricked lots of geeks from like an event on technology, right? So we said, we're going to have an Internet of Things workshop of collaborative design. And they were like, oh man, yeah, we want to come. And then they got there. And we had all these ladies in a circle. And many of them got really mad at us. And then they left. But the idea was to sit down with them and just teach the geeks that sometimes you have to sit down with people and learn about them before you design anything. We had this really cool workshop on which we asked them what was one of the greatest problems that they had on their city. And you can tell that we're still struggling with not using technology. We did another, but it was flat, another map. We could have used paper, but that was a long discussion. I'm not going to get into that. The idea was asking them, so what is the big issue? Pollution is the big issue. Okay, why is it? And they said, well, we believe that it is because the people on the highlands are using fossil fuels and they're burning them. And that is what creates this layer of pollution over the city. We took this idea, we talked with some other people, and we had an extra workshop with people from the Fab Labs in Santiago, and then some other internationals that stayed after the fiasco of our workshop. And in the end, I cannot disclose where we got this data, but we made a simulation of how people moved by taking information from the metro, right? So we found out that there are numbers. If you generate numbers and you put them on the system, you can get some data, but that's another. So we started creating ideas on how to evaluate the pollution in the city. And then we left it for the hacker spaces there to continue the project. It was a cool experiment to bring them, talk to the community, and then do workshop, co-create, and then, and playing with maps. And we found out that we really loved doing that. This is 2018, 2 years ago, we did another really cool workshop, and we brought all of these ideas together. So you'll see, it had different components. One of them was teaching about technology, and the other was making maps. So for this workshop that you're seeing here, we created a game that was pretty similar, inspired on Cards Against Humanity. Yeah, so you know how that works, right? So you have two sets of cards. One has locations, the other has scenarios. And you have all these guys over here are getting the two cards. So you can, for example, get two cards and say, if you're standing on the corner of such and such, it is possible that I'm going to get mugged. And then people would laugh at some of the combinations, just like it happens with Cards Against Humanity. And then they would vote and say, yes, I believe that is true. It is a truthful statement, or it's not. And then we would log this by hand and then put it in a script that would take us 30 seconds, and then we would create maps in real time for them to look at. And the reason why we were doing that and not said, let's create an app, was because we were in a very dangerous community, in various dangerous communities. So in this case, for example, we had the police there. Like the police would come and hang out at the community center. And one of the questions was, in such and such, are there any cases of police brutality? And it was fun. It was interesting to see that the way that it was being set up did not raise any concerns by anyone, because it was only 10 seconds of yes and no, and then, okay, let's do another one, shuffle it. It was perfect. We continue, so this helped us to create a map that the city planners who were redesigning a park used to better plan how the police would act in those areas. So that was really interesting, and all this information came from different people from the community. Some of them were the ones who were somewhat creating the problems in it. So and we were being open about it. Like, we're saying, hey, we want to make a better community. Can you help us? And they're like, yeah. So this is another, yeah, it's muted. So this is another game that I want to show you. It's, we called it the Homemade Disaster Kit. So another very simple card game on which people have a set of home appliances or items that you can find at home, and then they're making a set of them to create a kit in order to fend themselves against any situation, a fire, it could be a storm, etc., etc. So the idea turned into a game, a real game, which is being developed conjointly with Public Lab, which is an organization that does community science in New York City, and it's going to be on their store soon. And the interesting thing is that this game is being distributed to communities in the United States. So I think that, like, sometimes you take a turn and say, technology, well, it's working this way, it's not working this way, and you just switch around and start doing new things that you really like. This is another game that comes back to the first idea of making devices for communications, sensors, etc. This is because we realized that we were in some communities where the people who were working with us were old enough not to be part of workshops to learn electronics and do soldering, etc. So what we did is we created a canvas with different sensors and different items that could go on a device of this type, and we had them choose the right sensors and say, hey, pick your own, like a Subway sandwich, like, which one do you want? What kind of sensor do you want? You want a proximity sensor? We can do it. You want a buzzer? We can do it. And the other reason was because in some communities we had problems with older population and the younger kids, because younger kids, they don't want to work together with their grandmothers. So this was a great opportunity to have them together. So you can see on that video, for example, we're having this workshop with ladies who are of advanced age, after 60, 70 years old in some cases, and then their grandchildren are explaining to them, this sensor works this way, but the grandma's like, no, that's not gonna work. For example, some solutions were meant for working in traffic. There's lots of road violations in El Salvador, so people have to worry when they cross the street. So this was meant to evaluate how we can give a warning for people who are crossing the road if there's a car that's coming too fast, etc. Or in case of a fire, if there's any fire, because it happens sometimes in this community, how can we create a device to let us know? And we learned from this that first, most of the problems that we find in a community are problems of people. Like they have problems talking to each other, communicating, and that is something that we see everywhere in the world. So we started thinking about big scale. And as Lonnie was saying, like the Silicon Valley mindset of going big, hard, and making 3 million and being the next unicorn, etc. But it's easier to get discouraged when you're in El Salvador, right? Because it's going to take a while before you get to those leagues. And instead, we started thinking about downscaling, because scaling can also mean to come down on a scale. And that is something that I learned from this guy, a friend of mine called Ryan Silva, and he mentioned that to us. So he works in development for international cooperation, and he came over, we had a meeting with him, we were talking about scale, we're gonna do all this, and he's like, you can go down in scale. Scale can be anything that you want. Do something that works where you're at. And then I want to tell you a second story, which is the story of a friend that I really love. His name is Fabio. He's Colombian. And he's suffering in that photo because we brought him to El Salvador, and he said he was rough. He's like, oh, no, I can sleep anywhere. But then when he got there, he realized, oh, you mean there's no beds? And I was like, yeah, you said anywhere. He got really mad. We had to get a cushion, like a mattress, air mattress for him that time. So yeah. He also did lots of turns in life, I think. He came from building this huge project that he did with, 20 other people. That was for a solar decathlon in Barcelona, a competition to build a solar-powered house using only digital fabrication. Like one of the biggest projects in the Fab Lab world of, like everything is huge and incredible. And it's a really cool project, like I asked him, like, can I use those photos? They're just really cool, and they're good to impress every single time. And he moved from that, and he invited his friends to start doing projects that would benefit people in the communities where he lived. So these photos here are from a project that he did in Manantiales, Colombia. And he started this whole process that begins with a consultation with a community, asking them, what they want for public space. We want to build a public space because we're architects, and they would ask the children, they would ask the elders, everyone, right? And then they would get that and then do workshops with students doing digital fabrication designs, renders, etc. And many of the things that would be built would use digital techniques like doing laser cut molds and then adding concrete. And then the other interesting part is that all the concrete that they use, instead of using a regular grout, they would add the remains of construction, like a construction material that's discarded. So it's all recycled, and then they would start making things like devices for kids to play, and some of them are really cool. For example, some of them are like, I want a horse, and then they design something that looks like a horse, but can also be a bench. Or I want to play with marbles, so they design a parametric thing where you can put a marble in one place and it can go like in 4 different places and other things like that. And this is part of the team. And we're all good friends. One of them is from Venezuela, the other's Canadian, the other's from Australia, and then Fabio. So they did a few projects here and there, but I believe that Fabio has continued steady forward. I met all of them in 2015 doing this art installation. And this was interesting because it was the first time, according to the people that we asked, that MIT did something outside of the campus. So what they did is an installation made with digital fabrication. It was a digital, like a garden with sensors, and it had, like a sensor for humidity and light, and would light up depending on how the plants felt, architecture, how architects sell their projects. But it was really cool. And one of the interesting things was that the community wanted to have it, but the city was really strict about permissions, so we had to take it down. But from that experience, I became really close with Fabio, and I invited him to come to El Salvador, and we did one of the projects of In Situ there. So this is close to the place where we did the project of Reacción, and this is the side of a mountain. We asked the community leader, and he said, well, this is our public space, because the people who planned the lots, they just left this sideways terrain for us to have playgrounds, but we can't do anything. And we want to have a lookout. So we brought Fabio, we started doing the workshops, and we invited everyone from the community, but it was mostly the children who arrived. And the children had a different plan, because they all said, we want a playground. And we started asking them, so can you draw what you want to do? And they all started making a playground. So, like political power always, so that's why you have to go vote, yeah. So, like we told the leader, hey, that's what they asked for. He's like, okay, so what we did is, it's a playground, but you can look from there. So it's kind of like a lookout. And it was an interesting project. Yeah, those are the designs. They were really cool. And we used those to make the renders and everything. And we started making curved, cement benches and stuff. And then the technique is making a waffle out of cardboard that you put together. All is laser cut, right? So you put it together, and then you pour concrete on it, so you can have a surface that can be crazy. So it was a really cool experience. After 8 or 9 days, we ended up with this park. So it's interesting, like from doing all this ego-filled construction to come to El Salvador and sleeping on the floor. Poor guy. And I really admire him for not hating us after that. But he really has a good heart for communicating with people. And he always comes to El Salvador and says, hey, I'm going to go visit the community and see how the playground's doing. Especially because one of the things that is most difficult when you build projects for community is that you have to go back. When you connect with people and you work with them, they always say, are you coming back and visiting? And I've many times said, yes, I will, and never do. And it's so hard. So I really admire him for always saying, hey, I have to go and visit at least for an hour and say hi, and and that is something that I want to leave with you as well. They've moved on to other projects. For example, this one is in Barquisimeto in Venezuela, which was done alongside other collectives, and they won some awards for taking this park that was in a very dangerous area and then turning it into a beauty, right? Another thing that's really important when you're working with communities is that you become a mediator, right? So you have to be good at who are the people around, talking to them, letting them know, etc. So he's very good at it. And also Rafa, who's the Venezuelan who works with them, as well. And then most recently, we've been talking about this project in Mexico, in Monterrey, on which there's a Fab Lab, and they're connecting with very specific people in the community. So building geometrical benches, architect stuff. But they're trying to find very specific people in the community who are interested in learning. And one of the projects that we have in mind for In Situ is to teach them, like to generate this knowledge for them to continue building things. So how can it turn into a business for them? Or how can it turn into a cooperative on which other communities can come and build things to sell or for their own playgrounds? So those are the plans that we have so far. We always speak about it, and we hope to make it happen. So yeah, third insight is inspire others to tell their stories. And what I mean by this is not only to have people and ask for their story, but rather to turn your projects into an experience for others to tell their stories, to have a story into it. And then you become a person who goes to the back, to the backs, and then you just look at them and let them go on with your idea, with your innovation, and let them become a part of it, So this is the story of another friend. His name is Benno. He's another good friend of mine. He's from Peru. And what's interesting about him is that he was born in the Amazonian jungle. And he became interested in technology. And once he started becoming better and better and better at digital fabrication, he came up with this idea. How about if we bring boats to the Amazon jungle and put 3D printers and laser cutters and have people learn in the Amazon about digital technology, and then we can have programs for biotechnology, and then we can learn how to save the Amazon jungle. So this image that you see here is part of a really cool workshop that he put together. People from 9 countries, we would come and work together every single week on developing technology, learning together, collaborating. And this is the big part of the story that I want to tell you about, because what Benno did was to open up his idea and to invite other people to be part of it. So we were all part of the team, and we were all like into it. We want to build a Fab Lab in the Amazon, and we were all rallying for it, looking for money, developing designs, and it was really cool. We would have, probably for me, it's one of the most collaborative projects that I've ever been a part of, because you would see people every week collaborating, sharing knowledge for free, and everyone was equal on that project. So that was really cool. There were some workshops that were done on site, and some people traveled to go and explore the Amazon, work in digital fabrication. For example, this that you see here is part of the project, right? They were building some designs to test how it would play in the water, and what's the craziest thing that you can build, because architects. And then on the other side, we had engineers who were building models for, like, we're gonna build a barge, it's gonna be like super crazy, funky looking, and we're gonna make it float. After a few months, I think the idea matured, and we started talking about having a barge, like a real boat, and then working with it, because it's really expensive to build something like this. But it was part of the journey, to dream big. This was made by a Fab Lab in Argentina, and it's really cool. People think that it exists when they look at it, and that's really cool. In the end, the Peruvian government seized a narco boat, and we were in talks about having it so that we could build the Fab Lab. You know how governments are. It took so long, and it was so expensive for them to go back and forth to the Amazon. In the end, we put a halt to it, but we were really close to making it happen. However, Benito has not stopped there. He's still doing workshops in the Amazon. So now he moved from having $1 million boat going down the Amazon River to say, how about if we just have a little boat and do workshops with children who live in the Amazon? So he's been doing that. And then he moved this whole model of let's build something that is technology to taking the best out of what he had done, which is, I think, two things. One is how people were collaborating. He developed this really cool model for co-creation on which you have a team of two here, a team of two here, and then you tell two people, okay, you're gonna have, each of you have one idea, let's put it together and make one, and then the other two make one, and then you have four, and then you say, well, you have two ideas, and then you turn it into one. And he's done work for many different organizations, like the World Bank and others, commercial organizations doing this. It's called Symbio Creation. And he has developed, from working with so many people in so many countries, a model to scale collaboration, which is even more important and more exciting than building a big boat for me. And also, I think that he inspired a lot of people into that. So I put this, I didn't know if it was going to translate well, but it's like, it was inside of you all along, right? Lots of friends in the Latin American network, and this is only the Fab Lab network that I'm speaking about today. We're all doing different things in many different countries. Latin America is very diverse. So sometimes North America has this idea that, oh, you'll speak Spanish, but then you see an Argentinian, and you see a Chilean, and you see a Salvadoran, you see a Mexican. We're a little different, but we have this sense of community, and which makes us, collaborate, say, hey, we're friends, and that is cool. And I see that with all of these people when they come together and we just sit down, and then someone comes like, well, I'm actually from the US. It doesn't matter, just come. It's always like that. It's the sense of, you're part of the community, you're one of, it doesn't matter where you're from. You want to be a part of us, just come. And collaboration started brewing, and new projects from the work of Benno started coming up. And I think it's not necessarily that Benno made it happen, but he set the basis for collaboration for the years to come. And that really inspired me. So for example, there's this project called Fab Lab Kids. I think now they're dropping the lat because it's not in Latin America anymore. They just started doing projects in Japan, and it's all about digital fabrication for children, which has nothing to do with the Amazon, right? But it's really cool that lots of people who met during that project started doing these workshops for children. Now we have this other one for open textiles, and people are developing new textiles collaboratively. Fab Crafts, which is one of the most interesting ones for me because they're working with communities in Peru, in Mexico, and other countries, just working with artisans and teaching them about digital technology, but also learning from them to build new types of textiles, looms that are made with digital fabrication and other low-cost alternatives. And then this one from a friend, Roberto Gallo, is a satellite, oh man, I can't say it, satellite crop monitor for cold weather. So this is a system that he's developing with some other people in the network to monitor crops because when the cold wind comes, usually they get destroyed. So he's creating these models to prevent this from happening and letting the workers know, like people who work in agriculture, so they can bring water, because that prevents the crops from dying. So that will save, I think, $40 million a year, only in Ecuador. Let's see. Oh, I turned this off. Let's see. Oh no, it turned off. Ah, there it is. I thought the battery had died. So a few final remarks. The first one is about the journey, right? You never know what's going to happen, but I encourage you to do it. If you have one idea, just let it go. Like just throw it out there. Nurture it. And don't expect it to reach an old age. One thing that I told, there's this person from the US who came once. He was interested in scouting for projects, and he came over to meet with Kako and Mario, and he was like, so what are your projects? And we started saying, oh, we do this, and we've done this, and we've done this, and we've done this. And he's like, why do you have so many projects? And we're like, well, like in back in the day, people would have like 15 children, and we would wait for the best and see which one would survive. And it kind of is like that sometimes. You have to make the best with what you have, and you have to throw all the ideas that you can. And you just let them develop a life. Sometimes you will partner with 10 people in one, and sometimes only with 2, and sometimes you're on your own with another one. See where your passion leads you. Then the second one is that we need good people to take up the spaces. And I believe that you're the good people. If you don't do it, someone else is going to participate in all of these opportunities, right? But we want people who have a social mindset, who have a desire to hustle, right? And don't be afraid of being that person, right? Don't suffer from this idea that, there might be one person who's better at it. You can be that person. So I leave you with that. And then third, be DIY. Do things on your own. Share. Be open. I believe that open knowledge is the best. And that is going to save us from destruction down in the future. That is going to make humanity thrive once again. So finally, don't forget that whatever you do, always do it with your heart. Always follow what you really desire to do, and think about the people that you want to do it for. So thank you. All right.
Emilio!
Thanks so much.
All right, I got a couple more notes. So, amazing. Thank you so much. You are going to be sticking around to talk to people. So, some last things. Who's my startup weekend? Okay, cool. You want to come around to this side so you can get up easy? You are the inaugural group. You're the first people to be here for the presentations that are going to be going on for the awesome business competition. I hope you keep coming to the events, and I hope you spread the word, because you are that kind of, I don't want to say patient zero, that's the wrong timing. You are that participant zero. We have some upcoming events. The first one is Google Startup Weekend that's going on this coming weekend. You're going to get a 1-minute pitch on that, and then you can hear more about it. So if these ideas of making stuff is like, oh yeah, I want to do something, I have no idea what it is, tell us about it.
Thank you guys, I appreciate that. This was awesome. What a great talk. You guys have a chance to kickstart any ideas that Emilio or Lonnie might have inspired you this coming weekend at HSU for Startup Weekend. If you have a business idea, you can pitch it. If you don't have a business idea, you can work on somebody else's business idea. This is your chance to network and do a little bit of the journey and do a little bit of the legwork and share your ideas with others and kickstart them to change, starting with our community and then above and beyond. So thank you. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Lonnie.
Thank you. And then 1 week from today, same time, same place, we have Dr. Penelise Drost returning to Humboldt to talk about what happens when you invest in your own communities, and especially in indigenous communities. I want to give a thank you to our partners, Blue Tech Valley, Small Business Development Center, and HSU. Thank you. They're in the audience. How are you feeling? Did that inspire you? All right, let's hang out some more. Thank you so much for coming. You're all awesome. Talk soon.